Well, I'd like to talk a little about the Yellowstone Hotspot and some of the things that led up to the discovery of it. I did work way down the Snake River Plain in the Raft River Valley, and it was always, there was something up to the north that had a story in it from there. And everything really crystallized after the 1983 Bora Peak earthquake, and we were looking at the distribution of faulting that in the whole region. And I knew Lisa Morgan, who had actually done her thesis work on the next older volcanic field than Yellowstone, and invited her to work with me on this to try to describe what we could. We could see faults on the north side of the Snake River Plain that seemed to be particularly active, and we could see them, that they went on a trend right to Yellowstone. And then we could see a set of similar faults that also were quite active that trended down towards Salt Lake City. And we also noticed that the Snake River Plain went right, bisected these two trends, and we knew something, that there was a volcanic progression. So it appeared that two big Earth features were related here. One was the succession of volcanic events, and the other were these zones of particularly active faulting, arrayed kind of like a bow wave about a boat that moved up the Snake River Plain. So it became clear that, and this is sort of a classic way geologists think, and that is we saw patterns. And if two patterns converge, that's particularly meaningful. And then we added one third pattern, and that is the general high terrain around Yellowstone. So that led to the greater articulation of this hotspot idea. Well, during the last glaciation, the Yellowstone area, when the ice built up to its full amount, which we call full glacial, 95% of the park was covered with ice, and ice was going over the top of Mount Washburn, which is the highest place in the middle of the park. It's 10,200 feet high. We're overlooking the black-tailed deer plateau, a large meadow terrain in northern Yellowstone, and this consists entirely of glacial deposits laid down during glacial recession. The bulk of the deposits are inside what we call the Deckard Flats limit, and in this large plateau, a lobe of the ice from the Yellowstone River area spilled over into this area and pushed out into this large kind of a plateau. And as this ice receded from the outer to the inner position, at each position a set of moraines, and in the central part of the plateau ice marginal cane gravels was deposited. So we have this sequence of recessional deposits that probably has 15 different stages that you could subdivide out of it, each of which represents an ice margin and the deposits laid down along this ice margin. We're here on the crest of Mount Washburn at 10,200 feet, and this is a glacially polished and striated chunk of bedrock that's been rotated a little by frost action, and the high polish and striations on this indicate glaciation during the last glaciation by ice flowing from the south to the north across the top of the Washburn Range. And it also indicates that the ice levels were rising to the south of us towards Yellowstone Lake, probably to about an altitude of about 10,000 or 11,000 feet above sea level. The idea is that a stone held in the base of the glacier is dragged along the surface of the bedrock and scratches it and polishes it. And there are many stones together, and there's also sand. So it's very much like taking sandpaper to a board, polishing it that way, and also having some coarse grit in the sandpaper that's leaving coarser scratches across the polished surface. This is the discovery site that demonstrated that the ice levels in Yellowstone were quite high, that the levels on the Yellowstone Plateau reached up to 11,000 feet, and that during full glacial time, ice flow was from the south to the north. Previously, it was thought that the major glacial effect in Yellowstone was ice coming from the north in the Beartooth Range and carrying some granites to the south, as indeed happened, but that did not happen during full glacial conditions. That only happened during glacial buildup and recession. We have this lake basin. The lake itself is 90 feet deep. We've seen today it goes at least 20 feet deeper than that, 110 feet deep. And that it's surrounded by flood deposits, with a bench that's maybe 100 feet above that, and actually a flood bar that is 300 feet above that. So flood waters 300 feet above the height of the present lake. We're coursing down the canyon past where Crevice Lake is now. And Crevice Lake itself is surrounded by these flood deposits, boulder on boulder, class supported flood deposits.
Imagine being camped someplace above 300 feet.
Yeah, if you were.
And hearing it coming down the canyon. Can you imagine what that would have been like?
It would have been awesome. Awesome, and they're probably the waves, the standing waves in
yeah.
it,
and the
front
jets
of it.
on that front, shooting up and just like the parting of the Red Sea.
Yeah, actually, all these deposits that we're looking at wouldn't have seen that. We'd have just seen the waters.
That's right.
Probably not even been that aware of the deposits at the roaring torrent.
Give him kippered snacks.
That's amazing. I would never have picked it.
You're taking all of it.
Well, okay, there. There's enough for one more.
One more small cracker. When we were working down in Jackson Hole, one season I had a bad back. And Ken showed me this exercise, where you kneel down, you pull your arms in, all hunched up in kind of a fetal position. And he was stretching tendons, and I thought to myself, God, this must look like a great lunch stop. And these people contorting after they eat. It's logical.
Hey John, look at that boulder.
My Lord. And look at this one. The top of this thing is just covered with it. It looks almost like a moraine.
It's got the right form for what we're looking for. This has got a nice broad crest.
Yes, it does.
And a very gentle up valley inclination. Boulders on the crest, but 50 years ago, the only thing we could have called this was a moraine, but
That's right.
It ain't.
That's right. People would argue that it was a moraine, but it sure as hell isn't. But the size of the boulders is what gets me. That granite, golly Moses.
And-
hold on a second. You've got cobwebs on.
Aging geologist.
That's great.
Yeah, have them on your neck.
They're just perfect cobwebs.
Methuselah.
They were stringing from your hat down to your shirt, you know, right?
You look like out of a horror film. Had an inkling, you know, that the Lahadi Rapids played a bigger part in Yellowstone's history than any of us had thought. We were walking along the trail, we were going pretty fast because we were late. And Ken stepped on a chipmunk. He stepped on a chipmunk. I claimed he did it deliberately. I really don't think he did, but it sure looked like a deliberate act. And the thing was squirming, and of course, he'd already passed over the chipmunk, so I had to kill it.
Ken, what do you have to say for yourself?
Well, I couldn't understand why the chipmunk ran towards me. We were just sort of walking along, and it figured its escape route was unfortunately right underneath where I was going to step. I still feel bad about that.
Poor Ken.
USGS, this is 700.
We're on Crevice Lake and staying at the Lower Blacktail Cabin, and everything is okay. So again, not in terms of feet.
We really hit it straight on though. Okay, so
Is that pretty characteristic the way that
well, I don't know.
loose?
It'll be loose like that, but when we get a frozen core, you can see the laminations all the way to the very top. And you can see them here too.
Yeah, it does have some bedding in it that's
Yeah.
sort of fragmented.
Yeah.
This is quite an interesting place for the combination of geology and archaeology. Right here at the outlet of Yellowstone Lake. Years ago, I noticed that there's something anomalous about this place, that the river has a really low gradient. It's almost flat, although this is the outlet of the lake, and that we have shorelines here. And another problem about the shorelines was that they were thought to be quite young, and yet some archaeological evidence that was known but not paid too much attention to by geologists indicated this was really old terrain over here. Over there at about the level where the highway is, we have Paleo-Indian points which indicate age. So there was some real problems, and we didn't and it looked like we'd have to put geology and archaeology together in order to make some progress on it.
We certainly know from the archaeological record that people have been here for over 10,000 years, and you know how all that relates into these folks' origin myths.
I wish these origin myths were a little bit more specific, and they would tell me just where the lake was and what the river looked like. I guess at times it was a vigorous flowing stream. That was probably observed. At times it was high, and then went low, and then went back up. And they probably observed it. And in a sense, we're trying to recreate this history that wasn't written down and was lost in the oral tradition.
Right. And we certainly know that a lot of these hydrothermal explosions occurred during the time when people were here. So somebody must have witnessed that also.
Yeah. The youngest one's just over here occurred 3,000 years ago, and at a time that the lake was low. Well, here we are on the shore of Yellowstone Lake, and this section's gotten eroded out of the bluffs. This is the Mary Bay 2 explosion deposit, and it goes from up here, and we can find sand beneath it here. And it was formed by a big explosion, steam explosion out of Mary Bay. And in this site, we can see that it's been covered by well-sorted, sheet-bedded open-work pebble gravels. And this indicates that it was in a lake environment after the explosion occurred. And the bedded sands that we can probably come over and get a better view of, you might want to do that. Right here. And dig this out, and here we see a nice shallow water sand, so that the explosion occurred in a shallow, when the lake covered this area, it was a shallow lake at this site. Looking at this beautiful columnar jointed basalt across the Narrows Canyon of the Yellowstone River, I'm reminded of a field experience I had. I was working here and quietly studying the basalts, trying to figure out why they were different across the river. And an older couple drove up, and we're looking at across the river, and did see this beautiful columnar joining, and looked at it for a while, and then one turned to the other and said, the way our government spends money, it's beyond me.